Joining us live is James Schwemlein, Senior Director at Denton's Global Advisors at the Albright Stonebridge Group. So, James, timing is everything. So, why is Pakistan Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif doing this now?
Hi. I think there are three reasons to focus on here. The first is where he made the announcement. He announced this change while he was visiting the United Arab Emirates, a country that is drawing closer to India, but has historically been close to Pakistan. This is a dynamic that Pakistan is increasingly facing. Two, Pakistan is facing an economic crisis. So he's asking for money. He's asking for money from Saudi Arabia, from the United Arab Emirates, from China, from the International Monetary Fund. So he's in the UAE asking for something. And what do they want? They want improved relations with a country that's increasingly important to them, India. And then third of all, there's an internal political crisis in Pakistan ahead of an election. They've just faced a tumultuous period with the former Prime Minister Imran Khan. They've just had a transition in their chief of army staff, and they're running into a next election in the next 8 months. This is a moment where political issues that are political, that unify, are rare, and one of them that is, I think, common is the demand of Pakistani politicians and the view of Pakistani politicians of Indian Prime Minister Modi and of India's actions in Kashmir. So there's a rally around the flag objective here. It's not so much what Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif said today that he's banking on. What they're banking on is the reaction to whatever India does next, because India is not going to accept, or there's no evidence that India is going to accept an offer to dialogue with Pakistan at this time.
And all this is conditional, James. Mr. Sharif says India must restore Kashmir's autonomous status. So perhaps bring us back to 2019 when things began to unravel, the key issues then and how it's evolved to today.
Sure. So Prime Minister Modi has a long history in terms of, as perceived, I think, by many Pakistanis and many in the Muslim world, of treatment of minorities in India. It goes back before 2019. But in 2019, following his re-election, the Indian Prime Minister and his government revoked what was Kashmir's special status under the Indian Constitution. It was a status that was basically provisional and recognized a reality that was Pakistan and in part of it, China and India contested this territory, and so there was a process of transition that was possible. By revoking this special status, basically what the Indian government did was deny that there was a possibility of future transition, which of course, has been their view for many, many, many years. But what was perceived in Pakistan as a rebuttal of any potential for peace. This was, advanced by a widespread cutoff of the region of Jammu and Kashmir, by curtailing telecommunications access, by curtailing travel, by limiting media access, freedom of movement. These violations were viewed in Pakistan as human rights violations. They were used as a political rallying cry. 10 years ago, when the current Prime Minister of Pakistan, Shehbaz Sharif, when his brother was running for his previous term as Prime Minister, his brother Nawaz Sharif, Nawaz ran on a pro-normalization with India platform. He wanted to improve economic ties with India. It's 10 years later, we're in a period where no Pakistani leader can really promote the idea of peace with the Modi government because of their perception of the actions that India has taken in Kashmir. But I think more important than anything India has done, and frankly more important than how Pakistan feels about it at this point, is that India is looking beyond Pakistan. This is a year where India is hosting the G20. They're hosting the Shanghai Cooperation Organization Summit later this year. India is emerging as a great power, and Pakistan is currently in economic turmoil, facing political turmoil and elections, and in a moment facing a crisis of confidence.
And James, there have been some backdoor diplomacy attempts to resume negotiations. For example, the UAE brokered one in 2021, and Mr. Sharif wants it to do it again. Help us understand again what the UAE brings to the table as the mediator and which issues in particular it can help to address.
Yeah, so as I said at the outset, the countries of the Gulf, the UAE, Saudi Arabia in particular, are looking in their region at the markets that are most important to them. And India is at the top of that list as a potential source of consumption for oil that's produced in the region, and also a source of work, of labor, in terms of migrant laborers, which continue to be vital in this part of the world. So the UAE prioritizes improving relations with India. This is an effort, for the record, that the U.S. has endorsed through a process called the I2U2, where Israel and India, plus the United States and the UAE, have come together in a dialogue for the first time, looking at this kind of regional economic area and its development. The UAE comes to the table with a desire to improve its relations with India, and also a historic relationship with Pakistan that goes back a very long time. And many in Pakistan view the UAE leadership as models of what is possible in terms of responsible development and economic development. Frankly, a responsible economic development story that Pakistan itself has aspired to but never experienced. So the UAE brings in Pakistan a great deal of credibility to the table as a long-term partner, as someone who has backstopped them at periods of economic turmoil, and with India as a country that has prioritized developing improved economic and political relations, and frankly, a country that is a center of global commerce in exactly the direction that India has increasingly taken over the last 10 or 15 years. The issue now is who is going to accept cost, who's going to take on the pain that will be required to improve relations between India and Pakistan. I would argue that there's no outside country that available today that is going to actually be in a position to accept the potential risk of brokering such an agreement. The UAE, China, the United States, and any other options available. None of these countries actually want to sacrifice their relations with New Delhi today in order to broker ties or an improvement in relations with Pakistan, who in each of these capitals is perceived as unreliable today. Now, hopefully that can change. Hopefully Pakistan can come out of its current economic turmoil and get back on a growth trajectory. It can achieve political stability, and continuing improvements in Pakistani internal security can lead to, I think, a change in perception internationally of Pakistan as a source of insecurity. So hopefully this dynamic can change, and Pakistan can be viewed again as a potential responsible partner, and frankly, a potential a country that India could stand to benefit from engaging, as opposed to how it is today perceived in India,
okay,
which is a source of risk.
And James, very quickly, you mentioned all of these complex ties between the two neighbors. They aren't an easy fix. So looking ahead, what do you perceive as the biggest challenge of getting relations back on track, at least maybe in the short term?
I think the biggest challenge of all is a different focus. India is looking out. India is looking at the great powers of the world, at being at the table where of the center of global decisions, whether it's the G20, whether it's a conversation that includes China and the United States and other great powers. That's where India aspires to be today. Pakistan is in a fundamentally different position. They are at a moment of basically economic isolation, of really significant economic problems, and they're nowhere close to the G20. They're something like the 60th largest economy in the world today, despite being the 6th or 7th largest country by population. Pakistan is a country with tremendous potential, but that potential has not been unleashed by up to this point. Hopefully that can change.
James, thank you very much for your insights. That was James Schwemlein, Senior Director, Denton's Global Advisors at the Albright Stonebridge Group.